to start out with. Okay. Team, are you guys ready? Do I got a thumbs up from everybody there? Okay. So welcome to the folks here in attendance. This is the neighborhood open house virtually set up. Certainly a necessity these days because of COVID. This is for those of us that work in city government and in the procurement of public projects. This has become a necessity. So it may be the first time for you. Hopefully it goes smoothly. We have done this sort of thing, as you might know, in the city of Excelsior. City council meetings are held virtually like this. So it's a little bit different. I think if we could all pick and choose the best way to do this, it certainly would be in person to get more connected with all of you, certainly put a face to the name, and have even individual conversations. But we're going to be doing the best we can with this vehicle, with this format. We have a lot of information to share with you. And I'd just like to start to say that this meeting is specific to the east parking lot. So that's the surface public parking lot in the city of Excelsior, downtown Excelsior. If you're a member of the community and actively involved, you might see other information pertaining to some other similar virtual open houses that will be held next week. And so there are other projects that the city of Excelsior is looking at and working to move towards the construction season this year. Some of you may be invited to those as well too. Anyone is certainly welcome to attend, but the invites have been targeted by specific project areas. But tonight we're going to be talking about specifically the east parking lot. And I'll introduce myself. I'm kind of kicking things off here, but my name is Morgan Dawley. I am the consultant city engineer for the city of Excelsior. I've been serving the city council and city staff in that role since 2010. I've been fortunate enough to have gone through this process and several fairly significant infrastructure improvement projects in many different areas of the city. And so this is a natural progression in what I think I've seen over time as a strong commitment within the city by the leaders and in partnership with the community, businesses, people who live here in town, to improve things, basically improve the quality of our streets, improve the quality of our utilities. And this meeting is just the first step in this one component specific to the eastern parking lot. Again, my name is Morgan Dawley. I'm the city engineer. And so I kind of provide a general role of leadership, direct contact with the city council. But I do have a lot of people here with me today that are experts in their own field. They also have, I think every single one of us has worked, or almost all of us has worked in Excelsior before on past projects. And very quickly, just to introduce all of them to you, and I'm just going in order from left to right, no particular order, but we have Alex Mollenkamp. She is a project engineer and will be helping with the project management and some of the construction administration setup for the project on this project and some others within the city. We have Kristen Moen, who's a communications specialist. She has served on our last project in 2020 as the communications director with all communications with the public specific to that project. And she'll be repeating that role for this project and also helping us out with some other projects in Excelsior in 2021. We have Tom Russell, who is our veteran of the construction world. He is a construction representative who is there every single day during construction and has worked on the last 2 or 3 projects in the city of Excelsior going back to, I think, 2017. So he's well versed in downtown Excelsior and just Excelsior construction in general. And we rely heavily on his 30+ years of experience in the industry. But although he looks like a contractor, it's important to note that he is the city's person and represents you all as citizens, business owners, and property owners in the city, and is trying to keep tabs on the contractor. So he's not a contractor, he works for us and with us. And we have Tim Amundson, who is the Public Works Superintendent. So he is heading up the Public Works Department for the city of Excelsior. And is a very large partner with these types of projects in making sure that everything is coordinated. And we're working together, again, in a big picture sense for the city council and for the residents and business owners. And then also to my right, I have Gage Thompson. He's another project engineer who is on the design side and has worked on the last two Excelsior projects going back to 2018.
Trudy, she's driving me nuts.
Oh, Tom, you got to mute yourself there, bud.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We'll get you into the swing of things. And finally, last but not least, we have Brad Reifsteck, who is our project manager, who has managed the last several projects in Excelsior. So we do bring to you a team of varied expertise and experience and a lot of specific experience to the city of Excelsior. I wanted them all to be here tonight. Normally, if we were all meeting in person, there'd be an opportunity for a variety of topics and questions to be asked. And I don't want this to seem significantly different to you all, even though we are virtual. And we will have the ability to have more, I guess, if not one-on-one conversations, certainly answer individual questions. Let's see, I think that we could certainly start the PowerPoint, Alex, if you want to share your screen. I think before I kick into the slides, I would like to share with the audience my thoughts in terms of what this meeting is going to try to accomplish. If you've never been to one of these before, or if you're not, if you don't follow along with city government or city council meetings, the important thing here is I don't want this to appear as if a lot of this information is being, forced upon you, that all decisions have been made, that there's zero room for flexibility. That is absolutely not the where we are in the process. And in fact, one of the most important things about this early engagement before we get into having a contractor on board, or before we get into the construction season, certainly making any sort of formal decisions on scheduling or accommodations, what we need to do is we need to hear from all of you. So this is the first step in that process. Our aim here is to share as much information or early information as we have right now. We have gotten to a point where we do have a lot of good detail, but there is always room for modification. There is always room for customization. There's always room for individual conversations that might come into play if you are a business owner or if you are a property owner and you rely heavily on the east parking lot, for example, knowing that it's very common for people to have realistic, very real concerns about what does this mean if we're going to reconstruct the parking lot, right? And so that kind of two-way conversation, not just one way, that's the real intent here. And as I think the other thing that I'd offer up is that we want this to be the start of the conversation. There's going to be more updates, more information. We typically only hold one of these open houses early, but we might provide another forum very close or closer to construction. And we also have some very good communication methods for being able to provide out real-time information. When we get into construction, we are sometimes sending emails to the people that sign up for those email updates on a daily basis. No less common than once a week during construction. And as we get to certain points along the process, we're in January now, we have ample opportunity to share with all of you, for the people that sign up for updates, more information, more detail, but also, again, it's a two-way conversation. So it's with the hotline information that we'll share in a little bit, it's an opportunity for you to reach out to us, our project staff, and ask questions or get engaged that way on a one-on-one basis. Can we go to the next slide? Kristen, would you please kind of give folks a little bit of the detail on the technology here and what people can do to kind of take advantage of this virtual engagement opportunity, since we're all not in the same room?
Absolutely. So just some logistics tonight for this meeting. You have a couple of different functions on the bottom of your screen. I'm not sure if the same functions are for those of you that have dialed in, but please use the chat function. And if you'd like to, we can take this opportunity to, if you're willing and able to, please state your name and your address. And if you'd like to also share, if you're a business owner or just a property owner, that would be excellent for us to have in our records. So you can use the chat function right now to do that. There is also a Q&A function, which we will use to, you can use to ask questions, and we will be monitoring that throughout the meeting. So please feel free to type in your question at any point throughout the meeting, and we will get those questions answered. And then last but not least, we have a raise hand function. If you prefer to ask your question out loud, please use this function and I will be able to unmute you temporarily and you can ask your question if you aren't able to type it. And Alex, if you would go to the next slide, I'll just introduce the hotline information. So we have set up two hotlines, an email hotline and a phone hotline. You are encouraged to either put your email address in the chat function right now, or please send an email to this email address and we will get you added onto our email distribution list. Like Morgan said, we send out a weekly email and sometimes a daily email if necessary, which is just providing the most up-to-date information on the project. And this is a great way to stay in the loop about everything that's going on. If you have any question, comment, or concern at any time, you can feel free to email or you can call the phone hotline. And this is a 24-hour service and we do our best to get back to you if it's an emergency. We try to get back to you within a couple of hours, but we do our best to get back within 24 hours if it's not an emergency. Anything you would like to add, Morgan, on that?
No, that's good. I think I would just maybe add that for those of you that are putting your emails and name, and we don't need a lot of detail, we don't need first name, last name, but just so we maybe know if we did need to get a hold of you, we would know who to ask for. But if you put your email down, we'll just automatically add you to the email list. And if for whatever reason you need to drop off, you can certainly reply back and say, you know, please stop sending me updates. But we'll assume that you want to kind of stay in touch on this project and just automatically add you.
I do have one thing to add quick, just because I see we have one call-in listener. If you're calling in on the phone, you probably aren't able to raise your hand virtually. So you can press *9 if you're wanting to be unmuted, and we can unmute you so that you're not only listening, but you can ask your question as well.
Okay, yeah, that's a good thing for those of you on the phone. Just remember *9 or try to remember *9 and we can interact with you that way. Do we have, I thought I saw maybe there was a raised hand. Is that, Kristen, are we good on that or can we move forward?
Let me check here. I don't have anybody that has raised their hand.
Okay, that I might have just not seen that correctly. Okay, so again, brief overview. I'm going to try to run through some preliminary information in terms of just a general presentation that probably would be more interactive in a normal open house, but we'll have a short presentation at the front end of the meeting here, which I will do. I am going to have to ask all of your forgiveness because I'm going to have to jump off for another meeting. So I'm going to hand things over to Alex. She's going to move us from the informational presentation into a frequently asked questions section. That's really only intended to try to get at a lot of the things that we get asked on every single project. It's not necessarily meant to hit on individual specific concerns that some of you might have. And that's why following that section, if we haven't still answered your question, we're going to open it up to just an open Q&A and discussion, and we'll have more ability for one-on-one conversation. Before some of you jump off, and we want to be respectful of all of your time, we do want to take a quick poll. So before the top of the hour, we've got a poll, which is kind of a built-in feature of this Zoom call here. Hopefully it's not mandatory, but all of you that are in attendance, if you do have an interest in helping us out, get a general understanding of some general questions pertaining to timing and construction concerns, we'd really love it if you could take part in that. And with that, I think we can roll into the next slide, Alex. Oh, yeah. Well, so I already talked a little bit about the goals in terms of opening communication, introducing the staff. We want to find out more from you than we're probably going to be able to provide to you right now. A lot of it's going to feel very general, but that's because we are still early in the process. Don't think that any question is a dumb question or that it's an awkward question. Feel free to jump in. You know, we are dedicated to be here until 7:30, even though we'll probably finish with most of this before then, but in case some people come late. And if there's anything that you don't want to cover in this format, again, use that hotline, shoot us an email, shoot us a phone call, and we'll call you back or we'll email you back, and we can set up something one-on-one, virtual, phone, to your comfort level, in person, whatever is appropriate. That's our goal, is to try to be in touch with as many people with as many different unique concerns as possible. That helps us deliver a more successful project, I think, in the end. So next slide. This, I'm not going to read through all of this, but I do want everyone to know that we have had over the last calendar year in 2020, when COVID hit us, we did have a very important and safety focused effort within working with the city's contractor. Within the construction industry, this is a very high priority for all workers, not just city workers, but also for contractors that do work in and around the city. And so there are COVID protocols in place from a construction standpoint, and there is information on the city's website if you'd like a little more detail on that. Generally, and if there are any other concerns, again, project staff is here to ask questions or help you through that. But this is a focus, and the intent here for the city staff and the project staff and the contractor, who is not selected at this time, that things move forward appropriately and safely in all instances, given the pandemic that we are in and living through right now. Next slide. Okay, so this is just simply a depiction of the project location. I think all of you, if you're here and have been invited to the meeting, you're all fairly familiar with the east lot. Maybe a little more detail that might not be as obvious is that the cut through from 3rd Street to 2nd Street is actually a named and platted roadway, if you will, or a corridor called East Drive. And that little kind of corner back there as you drive back towards Marty Chiropractic is also another roadway, quote unquote roadway, that's called Union Place. On either side of those roadway corridors or driving corridors, there's private property, and on the east side, some of those larger parcels, those are owned by the city of Excelsior, and some of the smaller parcels that front on Water Street and some of the other areas surrounding, those are private property areas, but that also include the public parking area. And it's the intent of the city to really use this time, it's been on the city council's radar for some time as an upcoming improvement, but to really take this opportunity to reset the infrastructure clock, if you will, and to remove all of the failing pavement, replace the failing pavement with new pavement, and make other improvements where we can, since usually when you do pavement work, that is the time when you have the best opportunity to cost effectively look at that sort of thing. The history, real quickly, before we move to the next slide behind this, I think the council had identified potential improvements in both the east and west lots without a defined time frame as far back as 2019. In 2020, the city council did have staff look at several options in terms of restriping configurations, expansion, more expensive, less expensive. The direction that was given to staff was to, in large part, maintain the existing configuration, which is actually, as we looked at it, pretty much maximized. There's really not very many more parking spots. Well, if any, I think we found we can't add any more parking spots without compromising on size of parking stall. And so you're not going to see too many changes with respect to the configuration, but really it's about replacing that pavement, which is far beyond its life cycle in terms of what is expected to be in good condition. And also, one thing that we do have issues with in the area is drainage. And when it rains, we do have some drainage systems that are overtaxed and over capacity. And this is an opportunity with this project to improve that as well. So that is the intent. Next slide. As I mentioned, so the idea is to do full pavement reconstruction on both East Drive and Union Place, and also the parking lot at large. We are adding some sections of concrete valley gutter and drainage and curbing along the edges to help with drainage. We're also bringing things back up to ADA compliance. We're short a couple handicap stalls, and so we will be including those for a public parking lot, very important. We're also doing some very limited, but some underground work. I mentioned helping out the drainage. There is some storm sewer in the area, but we're expanding that to get more of that water underground sooner. And we found some areas of sanitary sewer, so that's wastewater, not storm water, that is in need of repair. It's something that does need to be dug up now, and this provides a perfect opportunity while the pavement is being replaced to fix that, so it doesn't have to be fixed later. And there is some discussion. This is an option being considered by the City Council. It's not for certain yet, but there's some discussion, and the utility companies of Excel and CenturyLink and Mediacom are looking into this. But there's some discussion about undergrounding or relocating the overhead electrical system, which is located on power poles, and burying that and putting it underground as a part of this project or in conjunction with this project. So that's a TBD item, I would describe it as. We are waiting for those private utility owners to do some more work and provide that to us for evaluation and for the City Council to evaluate it. But if it does move forward, that would happen in conjunction and coordination with the city's pavement and utility improvements. Next slide. There's also I'll point it out as describing the difference between the area that the city has historically maintained, which is most of the parking lot, including some sections of private property on the west side. I'll describe it of East Drive. Those are areas that are open to public parking. The city plows that area, I think has restriped it historically, has done other pavement maintenance. And so the intent is to take care of all that area, but there are a couple areas right up against the buildings, and not significantly large portions, but up against the buildings that front on Water Street, and also the small area back by Marty's Chiropractic that are not maintained by the city. Some of it is actually private parking. And so what we've done as an approach, and in discussing with the City Council, as an option, there is probably an opportunity, well, not probably, there's an opportunity to have those small areas actually included in the project. And the City Council wanted that to be an option for all property owners to participate on. If you're interested in that, we can meet with you one-on-one and provide you upfront estimates and let you know exactly what we think, at least at this point, before bids have been taken on that project, what that cost might be, and we can enter into discussions about whether or not that makes sense for you individually as a property owner. I would like to mention that these agreements would likely be between the city and the property owner, not necessarily the business owner. So if you're a business owner and you have a landlord and we need to have a combined combination regarding this, that's okay too. But we would need to get the agreement and the consent of the actual property owner that owns the land underneath that piece to be able to do that at the same time. But it's a relatively straightforward operation for us to do just a little bit extra paving. And so City Council wanted to make sure that that was an option for property owners to consider as a part of this project. Other than that, there are no assessments proposed. There's no other charges proposed for the bulk or the majority of the pavement or utility improvements that are being contemplated here. Those would all be city costs, and not considered anything that we would need to have individual conversations about a participation on a property by property owner basis. Really briefly, I'm running out of time a little bit here, so I'm going to have to move fast. We do think that there's a most likely order in which things are going to occur. If the private utility work is included, meaning the undergrounding of the overhead utilities, that does add a step. And as you can see on the slide here, the first thing that we would anticipate the contractor doing would be to do some of that underground utility work. So some of that storm sewer and sanitary sewer work that's mostly focused on those drive aisles. So East Drive and Union Place, that would be done first. If the undergrounding of electric and cable and phone is a part of the project, that will happen second. And then finally, the third part would be the actual paving surface that is highlighted in yellow on this slide. Next, please. Our anticipated schedule, and this is always subject to change, and one of the poll questions we're going to ask all of you is if there is a preference or concern one way or another. But in terms of our earliest anticipated schedule, in terms of how things might go, and we can modify this, we would be looking at a start of construction sometime in May, and that first phase of utility work would be done likely by the middle of June. It would probably take about 4 weeks, possibly a little bit more, depending on Excel and CenturyLink and MediaCom for that second phase, if it's a part of the project. If it's not a part of the project, we would skip to phase 3. But July would be private utility work, and then finally the wear course paving or the wear paving for the bulk of the lot would be happening. I'm sorry, I'm skipping a step here. After the utility work, the substantial completion for the first course of paving would be happening in August. We would let that sit through the winter for one freeze thaw cycle, and we'd come back and we'd put that final layer of asphalt on next year in 2022. So again, subject to change, open to modification, and we certainly are going to ask you some of your opinions on that and how that might impact your businesses and operations. Next, please. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to transition things to Alex. Alex, could you take over and maybe cover some of these FAQs? I'm going to leave the meeting briefly and I'll be back for Q&A, but I'll leave everyone in Alex's good hands. Thank you for your attention, and I'll be back in just a second. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Morgan. All right, nobody panic. I'm not going to read these word for word. I'm going to summarize them, but they're all spelled out with nice full answers here so that when we post it to the website, everyone can see kind of the full answer, but I'll paraphrase tonight. So what work is proposed? We kind of just went through that, but generally we're looking to have a brand new pavement in the parking lot. And while we're at it, we also are looking to increase or improve the sanitary sewer, that wastewater, and then improve drainage as well. So adding a little bit of curb, adding a couple more inlets to the parking lot to really get that stormwater underground. Will you need to enter my building? So the short answer is probably. There are a couple of operations that might require a construction crew member or one of those private utility companies to need to come into the building to either send a camera down your sanitary sewer pipe and make sure everything looks good, or possibly re-hook up how the electrical comes into the building. All of that is a little bit subject to change, but of course, in all the communication efforts we've talked to you about tonight, you would have plenty of advance notice and we would coordinate that time with you. Next question here is how much notice would be given regarding the schedule. So as we kind of mentioned, that email listserv is really going to be our most frequent line of communication to folks. So weekly, if not more often, we would be sending out updates and letting people know what to expect next with the project. That might also be a way that we get in touch with you about times where maybe we need to meet out on site and talk something through in person. Maybe we need to talk about how the trash is getting taken away each week. Anything like that is all communicated either through that email address or if need to, over the phone or in person. So frequent communication should be expected. Let's see here. Another question here, where will I pick up my mail and how will garbage service be affected? So we're not anticipating to affect anyone's mail. However, we are going to be in touch with everyone on how you receive your mail and other deliveries to make sure that we can keep that uninterrupted. If we did need to establish a temporary mailbox, we work with the post office and we set that up somewhere that's convenient for both the user and the post office. And then of course, once construction's done, you get to go back to your existing mailbox and we take the temporary mailbox down, but we'll deal with that on a case-by-case basis if it's necessary. Trash pickup, I think, will be a little bit more tricky. We're going to have to get in touch with each of you and the trash haulers and determine the schedule that's happening today and make sure that we can accommodate that. In general, the contractor is responsible to make sure that trash is picked up. So it is their job to do that. But we will make sure to be in contact and know what those days are ahead of time. Next question here is, what are the project work hours? So the City of Excelsior allows work during the week between 7:30 in the morning and 7 o'clock at night, and then Saturdays between 8 and 5, and no work would be allowed on Sundays or holidays. And then we've got this paragraph below here, which kind of talks about access to the parking lot, which is probably everyone's big question tonight. So in general, access to the parking lot is going to be available for the majority of the construction. Of course, you will see areas blocked off to allow for construction to take place where parking won't be allowed for a portion of time. You might see an entrance to the parking lot temporarily closed and only be able to use one entrance for a period of time. You can kind of imagine trying to work around a place that we wish could stay open fully is just going to take a little bit of shuffling and a little bit extra signage to make sure everybody knows where they can park and where they can access things. But the couple things that I want to point out right now are just that there are a few operations that the contractor will require access to the entire parking lot. So those operations in general are, if we have to do any sort of mass removal of the pavement or underlying aggregate, a lot of times we like to have access to the whole parking lot for that. It would be within a specified time range and we'd give plenty of notice, of course, for that. Similarly, when we pour concrete curb and gutter, we talked about adding that along Union Place and along East Drive, kind of those drive lanes. That concrete does require a 5-day cure time just to make sure that it sets up to its full strength. And so we would either block that off or have to block off, a bigger portion of the parking area so that we don't have cars traveling over the concrete while it's still curing. And then, of course, when we go to pave the parking lot, we like to do that all in one shot, usually to have that nice uniform surface. And all of this would be communicated ahead of time to folks. All right, special deliveries, employee access, special events, how is all that going to be addressed? Well, as Morgan said, we're hoping this is just the start of our communication with you about these types of things. So we want to understand more on a business-to-business basis when you are getting deliveries, the days and how many trucks you might have coming to your business, who accesses your business off of the parking lot. Is it employees or is it patrons or maybe a combination? What special events do you have going on? We'd love to know all of that ahead of time. It makes it a lot easier to be able to accommodate those events or those special needs if we know them in advance and we know as much of the specifics as possible. However, you all can understand that, of course, we also want the project to get wrapped up in a timely manner. And so there are going to be times where we're going to have to compromise and look for how can we make sure that the event can still take place, even though it might have modified parking. All of that is really, that's why we have this big team here, is we're ready to work through those things and get the parking lot back open as quickly as possible. Just a couple more here. This is the last slide, and then we'll open it up to a full Q&A. But Where will construction vehicles and materials be stored overnight and on the weekend? They will be stored in the parking lot. However, it'll be our job to make sure the construction crew keeps them in an orderly and kind of, grouped together manner so that you're not having to drive around construction equipment trying to find a parking spot. And then we, of course, wouldn't let that block any of the businesses or property accesses either. Next question here, are you changing the grade of the parking lot? The short answer is, in general, no. We're not changing anything by more than a couple of inches, mostly near the center area, so that we can improve that drainage issue, and then so that we can accommodate that curb that we talked about putting in. And then last one here, we just added in, how will other parking lot users know how to navigate the parking lot? This is really more for those folks who might be coming to the parking lot for the first time in many months and think, oh, wow, okay, there's a project going on. How are they going to know what to do? And the short answer is we'll work with the contractor to make sure we have temporary signing out to let people know when an access might be closed or when a portion of the parking lot's blocked off, so they know where they can park and where they can access. Those, of course, then would get updated as construction shifts and changes so that they're current to what's happening. All right, so we'll show this again, the hotline, email, and phone number. Feel free to write it down. Otherwise, this, of course, will always be on the city website. And that's all we have for our formal presentation portion. So what I'm going to do now, I see we have one question that came in, but I will pause the recording here. And then we can open it up to any questions that people have.